Welcome everyone, this is Nichel Anderson. I'm your host for my podcast show, Nichel Anderson, Short Stories and Beyond. All right, today is the finale of my last podcast for my season 5 of 2021 to 2022. And before I get started, I just want to cover a couple of things. And with that, I do want to thank you so much for following my podcast, being with me in this journey of podcasting. Share with me as I go through these short stories from my book and Mitzrayim, a memoir. So I do appreciate that. Just to touch on a couple of things before we start my finale episode of MOLIAE is that my summer break does starting next month in June, and then July I'm on break, and then of course August, then returning back on September. All right, you will get those breakdowns of those dates. I haven't yet decided to either continue the bi-monthly. I do want to concentrate on some other projects that I'm rolling out this year, and I really need that extra time, and I like to kind of commit what I say I'm going to do. So I probably will make my decision no later than August. Hopefully sooner, but if not by August, I would know that it's going to be like once a month, and then I'm going to focus on releasing bonuses periodically, and if not, it'll be bi-monthly. But I'm definitely looking at that. That'll kind of really open up my time so I can focus on other things. So especially my mission is to work on my book, the phase that I wanted to make it into, and that is into a feature film. So with that, please join my MOLIAE world on the Discord. That way you can keep up to date on some of my projects that I mentioned, like the NFT collections. I'm very excited about that to be rolled out, and the other collections I'm going to have underneath that. So do decide to become a member and go from there. Also visit mymolie.com where you can tap into ancient Egypt if you love it. Yeah, I do. You can tap into my merchandise line, and that's at molie.com, and we have different types of t-shirts and other merchandise as such. Continue to follow me on Facebook. Usually during my summer breaks, those 3 months, I'm not as reiterating the podcast that much, but I do highlight and update what's going on other things, particularly with these projects that I'm working on. So definitely stay tuned to that, particularly with my music album that is planned to be released soon. So follow us on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So definitely do that. And with all of that, I just want to say I really appreciate everyone that has been following my podcast these couple of years, and I'm looking forward to returning back for my season 6 starting in September and thereafter. If you're interested in to come on my show, to maybe read a character, what have you, definitely do that. You can send an email to info@molie.com that you're interested in being a guest speaker, and we can definitely work something out. Well, with all that done and said, I just want to say I'm very appreciative of my 5th year of podcasting. I really enjoyed it. During my summer break, I kind of do a reflection of the previous episodes and the season year of overall, and I kind of share that. So do tune in during the summer when I release that. All right, so we're going to get into this. This right here, a particular one, episode 61, my finale. I wanted to return back from where in episode 58, the finale for season 4 in May, was basically Hanee discovering that more people in the higher places was against him, and that they did not see the betrayal of Nontu, that he should not be supported. He should be handled accordingly due to what he did to Echo on Tamat. Tamat is another word for earth. And he's realizing that where he get a visit, that he basically accuses who? Some of the guards did not realize who was leading this to go to Hanee and tell him he has to vote a certain way to not commit Nontu. And it was Inky. Was very particular on that particular accusation. So in future episodes, you would know what all of that means and the significance of it. But Hanee didn't care, because he was like, I will not side. It's wrong. We need to stand firm, and Nontu need to be held accountable. And he was just outnumbered, but before he left, he told everybody, you know who's leading this? That one right there. And his name is Inky. So that's going to have some ramification on Tamat and beyond. And so we fast forward and now into episode 61, and we're going to start out from that point where Inky left, and he's like, okay, so you're just going to put my name out there? Fine. and still guards, get him and take him away if he's not going to vote, a certain way that they want him to vote. And Inky left, and the guards were handling Hanee and tying him up or what have you to take him away. In that sense, they do not want him to be present so he can take the vote against Nontu, because they still want to use certain groups, certain fragments of people and places of power, want Nontu to return back to Tamat. So that's something that I'm telling you now to connect to what I'm about to start of my finale of my podcast show. All right, so let's begin. Let's get started. Let's begin for my finale episode of Season 5, 2021 and 2022. For this week of my podcast show, Nichel Anderson, Short Stories and Beyond. For this week, episode 61, entitled, Of the Abyss, the Orion Hanee chooses a different path. Opening scene. We see Hanee fighting to no avail of the Orion guards that he once led with great authority, now pushing him off to his next domain as he tried to escape, but he could not. They handled him and forced him in the area so he would be secluded. As they went back and forth, they were able to do so and proceeded to put him in the space they commanded to them to do by Inky. He was alone to think until he knew they would come back to retrieve him and take him to his next point of destination. He knew the vote to commit Nontu will occur, and he will be not convicted. For him and his supporters did not support Nontu, but they was outnumbered. He thought over his options as he wrestled with the bonds around his hands and arms and managed to set free one hand as he knew of that knot of long ago, a military-type knot that he taught his guards. Then his thoughts raced to his wife and children, of them not knowing of what is of him. He paused to process the pain of knowing his wife and children, soon turmoil, emotional pain of not knowing, and the decisions he will have to make. Hanee sat in the tight space and focused on the moments in the future to what will be once he decides on what he will do when they come to retrieve him to take him to his destination. His thoughts went back in time to those that said one thing but did another, to forward move the Orion elite leaders to obtain the Astar or Mitzrayim for King Milan. He traced back to when Inky of the Unkeno got involved that continued to deteriorate the relations with Mitzrayim of King Milan and his supporters. Way back when the Astar, for which they all seek, now want to continue to do so, but not with Hanee as the lead commander, the highest rank Orion military officer in the galaxy of Orion, now in a shape smaller than a box of D-4, not fit for him or a bench to sit on. Hanee been in worse situations. This was the top of all, for he knew what he would decide soon will be his destiny once they take him to never to return back to this sector of the galaxy. To comply to a new different identity on a faraway planet, or not to comply. He pondered that. And then he said, I will decide. He thought and channeled to speak, and he spoke in a voice that only he could hear. Freedom is a choice. His thoughts then went to his wife, and he channeled her, hoping that she could feel to hear him calling. In the moments she connected, and in her emotion, he could hear her voice of worry. He telepathically said to her, "We have to talk. There has been an interconde." Early before that moment of Hanee, we are seeing his beloved loyal wife that continued to not accept the Orion guard's explanation to where her husband was, as he would have never missed the last half of Echo's ceremony back to those of before. She closed the door of their Homotak home and continued to think and wonder, where is he, as her mind and heart continued to wrestle with the truth or not the truth. She wore on dress of métier fabric, the color of those of sun and orange and blue. Her skin of tight metal, with eyes of long ago era of their species, for this now. She was a daughter of upper intellect class of the Orions. She remembered the notes of her father and mother. When moments of uncertainty consumed thee, she went to find it. And then she saw her female assistant and male guard. She quickly dismissed them to leave. She would not need their services at this moment. They left as she instructed. And then she went and saw her young son and daughter. They felt something was not well. She nods to them to follow her. As she made it to the enclosed room, she found the book of notes of her father, when suddenly she felt a message that she knew was Hanee. She gasped as he immediately told her what is occurring in the highest realms of them that will impact what they then know of the now will not be. He tells her what his decision will going forward. With tears streaming down her face, she nods as she looked at their two children that immediately knew, and they all looked at each other. She continued to telepathically speak to Hanee as her children heard her voice. She spoke with information in their language to Hanee, and her children interpreted. She said, "Anu oba ni basa zoiwa tala." Translation: Hanee, in our love, we will survive. There is another day. Their connection ended. She grasped the book tightly and then spoke to her children in their language. Unkeno re ifa kawata Marcos taspesofo ife irnu. Translation: Do you have courage of the unknown steps to be? Her children both looked at each other and nodded, then said in their Orion language, Yasa Minta. Translation: Yes, Mother. Then she responded and nodded as the tears streamed down her face. So do I. Meanwhile, the Orion guards and some of the Inky gods in disguise of Orion went for Hanee, now dressed in civilian Orion clothing to mask his true status identity, that he was in a closed chambers, and now with the guards they proceeded to take Hanee to the final destination. that they finally made it to the Accord pathway, known for its stone and architecture of their culture and civilization, as well as the secret pathway to the large and small starships. The many security guards continued to surround Hanee as the Kingo rays shine in the darkness above them, and the rushing sound of the river below continued to engulf what was proceeding at the moment. The Accord pathway rose over 30 feet tall over the river below of the Gete Ridge Nate, heading to the starship that would take Hanee to his new domain far away from the main galaxy of his home therein and the status that he had for so long. Hanee is walking in the middle of 20 guards with a set of 30 additional guards a few feet behind them. Suddenly, Hanee, as he pondered what would be of his family and friends and what he would do in this unknown place that they were about to take him to, as those against him wishes for him to not be of what was once before his status of leadership. Then suddenly he started to hum an old Orion Hotel song. The guards slowly stopped out of curiosity and turned to look at Hanee. He kept singing that the ones in front of him that boxed him in, they slowly stepped to the side as he continued to hum the song and walked in front of them. They slowly followed but continued to look at each other. They assumed perhaps he is accepting his fate and there was no need for such extra security. He was willing to leave Orion far, far away. Hanee started to sing the words of saying he remembered them as his subordinates that led them in a battle, and how sad it was to go along with such injustice of a commander general that treated them differently, for their choices have led to their own fate of no return. Some guards stopped questioning themselves, and what was this that Hanee about to say so much in the song, leaving unclarity by singing it, and boldness? They pondered amongst themselves. Meanwhile, at the next private moment returning to that of Hanee's wife and children, we see them trying to leave their long-time command of living house. But their long-time lower guard and female attendant stopped them. They didn't actually leave. They was right outside waiting. The guard of the family shook his head. I knew something was not of such. I will never let you and your children go about this alone. It has always been an honor to watch over Hanee of Unkeno family therein. We are family. We stay together. Hanee's wife held back her tears and nodded. She stated that they could not be seen together, as it will alert those that should not know that they are aware of what is happening to her husband. The guard and the female attendant nodded, and then the guard stated in serious facial expression that they all then must proceed to that point in the direction of the Gete Ridge. Everyone looked at each other and nodded, and they left as they all faded in the darkness. Meanwhile, we are back on the Accord pathway with many of the security Orion guards and with those of Inky guards as well. As the wind started to curl up in a wave as it reaches to where Hanee still in front, that suddenly he stopped, walking and singing. and he turned back and looked at the guards. They stopped as well. Hanee had a sad look on his face, as they were now in the middle of the overpass of the cord pathway. His civilian clothing moved with the wind as it tried to catch up with the other moments around them. One of the guards urged Hanee to continue to walk forward, as they did not want to do anything to their once leader, but had their orders. Hanee spoke. In life, it is not what you are told to do. It is the path you choose to make that define who you are. Where you stand, on which side. The guards urged Hanee to keep walking, as they did not want to do what they were told. Some of the guards lowered their weapons, though, as the words of their great commander struck something in their hearts. They remembered Echo and knew of Nontu's betrayal, but also knew not of this for Hanee to be sent far away from his home and of them. Hanee saw some of them ponder and regress backward as the others in front started to raise their weapons and slowly approached Hanee as he started to speak again. This was my home before either of you could walk. Another wind blew upwards that sent a feeling of wonder to the moment before them, as the rushing river seemed to sing the song of Hanee only a few moments ago. Some of the soldiers dropped their weapons and was emotional with tears. The sadness of what was happening engulfed them. When the front row of guards, still in position to take Hanee and was waiting for the next move, Hanee nodded and then said, as he quickly untied the known military knot chain that he taught them, and said in his ancient Orion language, "Kis na nasafada no kehin munu." Translation: choices are freedom, and I have chosen mine. Hanee, without notice, gasped his hands before him and jumped on the ridge rail and jumped higher to catch the next wind he knew would be raising up to catch the others before the other wind to the northern region of their capital. Hanee then jumped over the bridge down below into the river. As the many guards yelled for him to stop, Hanee plunged into the river and vanished as the waves covered him, knowing him from his beginning of time. Moments later, a few feet away, we see Hanee's wife and their 2 children as she moved in a small boat to where she saw Hanee at the top of the accord pathway. High up, and when he jumped, she merely grabs her heart and mouth to hold back her aching pain as her daughter hugged her tightly. Hanee's son immediately, like on cue, jumped into the water and swam fast towards where he knew Hanee would be. Their daughter grabbed the masul and started to follow by managing the boat, which Hanee's son reached his father and quickly put a sikeh over his face to awaken him. Hanee coughed in the sikeh and managed to float as his son helped him to the boat. Hanee's wife and daughter grabbed them to put them in, and their son quickly took control of the boat masul and started to sped away. As the sakat was removed from his face, Hanee coughed up some of the river water. His wife cried. Hanee mouthed and spoke very lightly that he loved her, for her to choose what will be. In tears as the silence surrounded them, only the sound of the river boat making its way passing underneath the large concord pathway above, they continued to go into the darkness down the river. Hanee's wife said in their Hawaiian language, Onmis vuas wana nesawa be. Translation: always my love of you. The boat of them fades in the darkness of what was their home in Orion. Insane.